Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
Mr. Yes.W. Hardhead Diesel lost our ties. Time to go back. Back into history with Pete, me, and the whole gang.
I gotta make these cocksucker money, son of a bitch. Why is it always me?
Hey, my name's Pete, Southwest Rod and Custom, Dallas, Texas, and I'm going to give you a little overall explanation of what a plasma cutter is today. A plasma cutter is designed to cut steel, all kinds of steels. It can cut steel, aluminum, stainless steel, solid stock steel, sheet metal. A plasma cutter is a very, very good tool to use when you need it. Now, depending on what plasma cutter you own or plasma cutter that you're looking at is going to determine how thick of steel. We're going to be talking about steel today, but this also applies to aluminum, stainless steel, basically anything that's made of metal. Okay, all types of metals, plasma cutter is good for cutting. And depending on the machine that you're looking at is going to determine what thickness steel that you're going to be able to cut through. So today we are looking at my plasma cutter, and my plasma cutter can cut up to ½ an inch of steel, plate steel that is, and the way that you determine that is by your heat range right here, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? That's the output of the heat range, all right? Now every model is different, it's gonna read different, okay? And by the thickness gauge, as you can see, okay, is the higher the heat range is, for the thicker the steel you're going to cut. If you were just going to cut some steel that's paper thin, or you want to do some type of artwork with your plasma cutter, you'd want it down real low here. So if you were going to do, let's say, 18 gauge and higher sheet metal, you'd want to go up into the middle, and then of course very, very hot would be set at the highest temperature. You got a pressure gauge here, and it also requires that it holds at least 60 pounds of pressure, okay? So what the machine is basically telling us is this is electricity over air, okay? The air is pushing the electricity out of the trigger to cause a reaction to cut our steel. Now, if you look at the plasma cutter itself, you're gonna see it says power, then it says pressure, which is your air, and then it says the cup, that's the tip, and I'm gonna go over that with you. That's the tip on your plasma cutter, and then it says temperature. If any of these lights are on, this is indicating if any of these lights are on, that means that the plasma cutter will not work. So if we flip our switch up and we see that a light came on for pressure, that means that there's no pressure hook to it, so we need to turn our plasma cutter off. And if Rich, the trusty employee, hello, can you please bring me the air hose over? Do I got the air hose over here? I got the air hose right here, Rich. Yeah, you can go back to work. Thank you, sir. So if we look at the back of our plasma cutter, you can see that there is an air inlet, okay, where you would put your air. And it also says air right here, 120 PSI maximum. But what I have done, and this is a very good tech tip for your plasma cutter, I actually added a water separator filter to mine, because there's actually an internal filter built inside your unit. But if that gets clogged up in any way possible with air, oil, or dirt, or trash, it's going to cost you almost just as much to replace that piece as it would just to buy a new unit. So we're going to go ahead and hook the air up. Okay, now it does have, I set the gauge in the front to 60 PSI. And as we're looking at the back, you can see that this is actually 115 or a 230 volt machine. This is a universal machine that can be used for heavy industrial, which is 230 volt, or you can actually, if you're going to do this, if you're going to use it at home, just use it on light duty stuff, you can flip the switch right here to 115. So that's a universal machine. That's another recommendation that my friend Pete recommends for you to use. So now that we got the air hooked up and the machine is ready to work, what we got here is we got our trigger. Now, this is a very interesting trigger. This is a very complicated type trigger. Okay, this has electricity running through it and air at the same time. So you want to be very, very careful with your hose, okay, not to step on it or ruin it. I can tell you from experience that this hose and trigger, okay, that I had to replace, cost me $375 because a piece of steel fell on it and cut it in half. So it's very important to always take care of your equipment. Okay, now let's take a detailed look at what a plasma cutter trigger consists of. Basically, you got your trigger itself, which has a safety feature on the trigger that you have to flip up to make it work. So when the yellow is down, you won't accidentally cut yourself with it, okay? Because that will actually cut a hole in you. That's very, very high heat. So you want to be very careful and make sure that your safety trigger is in good working order so you don't accidentally push it on accident for your safety and people that are around you as well. So if you take your tip apart, it unscrews very lightly, okay, and it consists of basically 3 pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and still use this tip right here because I just replaced it. But I brought out some spares to show you. This is called a ring, okay? It's made of a special type of plastic. And if you look real close, there's holes around it that allows air to breathe. Okay, now what that does, that keeps the air is coming off of your tip and it keeps the air is coming out of the nozzle or the trigger. Let's call this the trigger. The air comes out of the trigger and it surrounds the tip, if you look right there, see? So it's blowing air on that tip, keeping it nice and cool. And then of course you got your tip nozzle, which actually fits right on top, just like that, okay, once it's all together. And that's what our cup is for. See, our cup is designed to hold these 2 pieces together. And that's precisely machined, so your nozzle cover will fit directly on there. If you look right there, okay. And then it sits inside your trigger, and then, of course, the cap goes back on it. So that's basically what a plasma cutter consists of as far as a tip goes. I am going to go ahead and use the old tip that I had on there because, like I said, this is still in good condition and we're not going to waste it. These are very expensive to buy. You have to buy them at a pack of 5, and 1 pack of the tips costs $37 and 1 pack of the nozzles cost $42. So that's very expensive, so don't waste them. You want to take your nozzle setup and set it inside there and just lightly put your cap back on and screw it on, and you're good to go. You always want to wear safety equipment when playing with or using a plasma cutter. It's very important to always use your gloves. Do not do this barehanded. It is very dangerous. Always use good leather gloves, as you can see, to work your plasma cutter with. And I'd also like to say that it's very important that you wear safety eyewear. Now, I'm wearing yellow glasses. You don't have to wear yellow glasses just because I am. Doesn't mean you have to. But it's very important to wear safety protection on your eyes. A lot of people out there get a plasma cutter confused with a welder, okay? If you are using an arc welder, a MIG welder, a TIG welder, the light will harm your eyes. A plasma cutter will not. All this is electricity over air. There's high voltage electricity going through there and the air is pushing it out at such a high force that it's causing it to cut the metal. So you're not required to wear a welding helmet with this. It will not harm you in any way whatsoever. So don't be fooled and think you have to go out and buy a welding helmet or what have you. As long as you have some good eye protection on, gloves, and if you're doing a lot of cutting at one time, if Rich can come over here and demonstrate, thank you. Right here, sir, please. If you can see on Rich's face, okay, he has a dust mask. This is a professional dust mask that a professional would use. Okay, that will also keep fumes out of your lungs and out of your respirating area as you are using the plasma cutter. Thank you very much, Rich. You can go back to work now. There you go. Okay. Sometimes technical assistants are good to have around. So we're not going to use dust mask today because we're just doing minimal cutting. But if we were going to do a lot of it, I would have a good respirator type dust mask on. So I turned my plasma cutter on and I'm going to set my heat range, okay? If you look right here, you can see how thick a steel that we're cutting. And what I'm going to do, this is basically 1/8 inch plate steel right here. I have to cut this piece off. And then I got to come over here and I'm going to cut this tab off, okay? Now this, it doesn't really matter what this piece goes to, but it actually goes to a 1934 Ford kit car. This is a hinge post. If you can see right here, it's got the hinges in it, okay, installed, okay? And these are pieces that we don't need on this hinge post, and it'll make it easier for us to install that. So the first thing that you want to do before anything is done at all is you have to have your plasma cutter grounded to the piece that you are going to cut. And if you look right here, okay, you can see that I took my grinder and I grinded me down a nice big area right here, okay, of bare metal. You want to go ahead and take your grounding clamp and clamp that to the piece that you are going to cut. Now using a plasma cutter, okay, is a little bit technical and it's not as easy as you think. But once you get used to it, it becomes very, very easy and natural to use, okay? So you want to go ahead and flip the safety trigger up, and you want to go ahead and pull the trigger. And if you look right there, you can see, let me get it up there where you can see it. Okay, you can see that the air is pushing electricity out of the tip. Okay, your plasma cutter should overrun the air, and that is for the cooling of the tip to make sure that everything cools down and it doesn't melt. So we're going to go ahead and proceed to cut the bracket off of our hinge post, and I have turned the heat up quite high, not all the way up, but pretty close to as high as it'll go. And I'm going to rest my plasma cutter on the post here, and I'm going to get as close as I can. If you can see, okay, I'm actually tipping down. I want to go at an angle, and I want to stay on top. If you notice right here, it's welded, okay? I want to stay on top of that weld mark, because cutting welds with the plasma cutter sometimes can get very tricky. So we're going to stay on top of the weld mark, and I'm just going to go in a straight line. I got my finger on my trigger. I went ahead and put my safety up, and I'm going to hold my other hand as a brace. We're going to start it out, and here we go. Watch very closely that I am taking my time to make sure that it cuts through thoroughly. I am not going real fast, and I am moving it at an even, steady pace, watching it closely at all times. And that is basically how you use a plasma cutter. I'd like to show you how thick that steel is. Okay. That is some very, very thick steel, okay, that we just cut with our plasma cutter. I will proceed to turn the post over, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this tab off as well. While I'm cutting, I'm making sure to make sure that the cutter goes all the way through. I'm watching on the back side of it for sparks to fly out. If you go too fast, what's going to happen is your plasma cutter is going to build up slag in there, and you'll have to come back and do it again. So it's very important to always take your time. Let me turn that around so we can look at it. It's always better to always take your time and do it right. This post is done, and now what we're going to do, we're going to proceed to go ahead and cut the other tabs off of the post, but I'm going to zoom my camera in so you can get a better look at what's going on. I go ahead and take my ground. I'm going to go ahead and clamp that onto my post. I want you to pay close attention in this area right in here and watch how the cutting apparatus, or whatever you want to call it here, okay, actually cuts through the steel, okay? That's very important to keep your eye on the back side of it. And also at the same time, you don't want to be moving your torch around. And I want you to watch closely how far I actually hold the tip away from it. I'm not actually holding the tip right up next to it and dragging it across. I'm holding it approximately a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch away. So here we go. Let's cut this one off exactly the same way that I cut the other one off. If you take your time, how nice of a cut you can get. It's always going to leave slag on the back side. You can knock that off with a hammer, it'll come right off. But look how clean that cut right through there. I'll go ahead and proceed to cut the last tab off. I'm going to use the same procedure that I did before. And that piece is done as well. Back to our story here. Now what we've just done is I went over a quick, easy, simple lesson, okay? Plasma cutters are designed for many, many uses, designed for a lot of stuff that can come to your imagination to put the plasma cutter to use, okay? I could have used a cutting torch on that. I could have used a cutting wheel to cut those off. But why? The plasma cutter did it for me. This is a very, very handy item. It's a very, very unique and fascinating item due to the fact that you can do a lot of stuff with it. Anything that's related to metal that needs to be cut, plasma cutter is the way to go. This is Pete. Take it easy. 1/8 inch, 3/16, almost 1/4 inch plate steel, cut in half just like butter. You can look at that. Okay. It's amazing. It's a deal that's been done. The situation has been solved because we found the solution to do the job. My friend Pete, your friend Pete. Watch for other upcoming videos on the plasma cutter itself. As we get to doing stuff with the plasma cutter, we will be enjoying the plasma cutter a lot more, and we'll be learning a lot more stuff with the plasma cutter. Take it easy. We'll see you on the next one. I don't know what to say. That's it, you know. Great day outside, don't ruin it, okay? Be happy and think positive, and things will happen your way and will come your way. It doesn't matter how bad they are. We'll see you later. Take it easy. Bye.
Thanks for watching D.I.Y. Automotive School. Classes don't stop till you know everything.